My name is Glenn Schick. I am a mastering engineer of 30 some odd years, and I am based out of Reykjavik, Iceland. Today, we're actually going to talk about my journey going from speakers to headphones. Some of my early stuff was in hard rock bands, new wave bands, playing guitar. I was always like a guy that played with synths, drum machines, keyboards. I love technology. I ended up meeting some people that were in the need of drum programming. And this was at B-Boy Records in the South Bronx. This is early 80s, and our biggest act, I think, was Boogie Down Productions, which was KRS-One and some very early New York hip-hop. After doing work in New York, a friend of mine who was in Atlanta said, "You need to come to Atlanta. It's the burgeoning scene of hip-hop. You do hip-hop, don't you?" And in 1994, I opened up my first mastering studio there, which there weren't really any dedicated mastering studios in Atlanta then. That was the first of 3 studios I built. There's one that had a car inside. We used to let people demo stuff. We had a Neumann lathe in there, which was the first one I know of in Atlanta since the 70s. Around the early 90s, I started working with the Grammy organization. I became the Atlanta chapter president and later a trustee and chair of our P&E, which is producer and engineer wing. They were always calling on me to go to LA. I was losing gigs. I was not able to, do those emergency singles when somebody would call. I was really frustrated by this because, it would always be like the best gig of the year would always come when I was at the meeting. I saw one of the guys there had his little Mac laptop set up, and he was doing little mix edits, not like mixing a record, but doing little mix edits. And I said, God, I wonder if I could set up a little mobile setup to do mastering. I got a little laptop and I got some in-ears because I thought that was the way to go. And I ended up doing a whole bunch of really good records. This happened after I closed my studio, which was around 2012. I said, I think I can actually work in this environment. And I went from a fully analog studio to totally in the box. So everything I said that I wasn't going to do, not use plugins, I'll never go all digital, I'll never do this. I ate my words on every single bit of it. So I ended up living in 7 countries. Wherever I went was my laptop, and at that time, my in-ears. Around 2018, I met a buddy of mine named Paul Stacey. Paul is a producer that works with Oasis, Noel Gallagher, Kurt Rosenwinkel, a bunch of guys. He's a UK producer. We always had a real simpatico about gear. One day he came to me and he said, "Mate, I have this headphone I tried. You really should check them out." And he was talking about Audezes. They were the LCD4s at that time, which was their flagship at the moment. He lent me his headphones. I tried them out. I loved them. And that became kind of my new paradigm for how to work. After Paul introduced me to these headphones, the very first project I did on this was a project from J. Cole. And it became a #1 record, broke every streaming record known to man. 2018, nobody touched it. That won the Dynamic Range Day Award in that year. And it's one of the few hip-hop records that has a lot of dynamic range. We're now full deep into the headphone thing at this point. I'm making all my records on my LCD4s. The big things that I want you to kind of take away from here is you're going to get a working setup that's going to work for you. Not everybody's going to use the same headphone. Not everybody's going to use the same DAC. Not everybody's going to use the same DAW. But it's really important that they match well. A lot of people will go and say, "Oh, I bought some LCD4s or LCD5s from you guys, and oh, they're wonderful, but they don't sound good when I turn them up." And you find out that they're plugging it directly into a PC, or they're using like a lower power DAC. You really need to match up that headphone with the right amp and the DAC as well. When you're making the switch over from the speaker side to the headphone side, references become really critical. The thing that I want you to do is to refamiliarize yourself with everything. It probably takes about 2 weeks to retrain your brain to recognize things that you could easily recognize on your speakers and in your room before. It's not something you're going to plug in and get great results. So start pulling out your references. I'm going to play you a few of mine, and I'll tell you specifically what I'm using these references for. The first thing I'm going to play is I think it's an Andy Wallace mix, and it's Vertical Horizon. There's a guitar intro, and I think he might be hitting the pickup selector on the guitar. There's a little noise, really little noise. I want to see if I can spot that noise when I'm retraining my brain. See if you can spot it. Did you guys catch it? Yeah, that's a little tricky one. Let's do one now for the bass. About the second run of the intro, there is a 38 hertz note. It's just a drone note. And it's a really tricky note to hear on a system that doesn't reproduce well. I found a lot of systems do not reproduce it. This is a Chris Brown song called Run It. And see if you can find where the bass note is.
Okay, check it out. It's Santana again. Stepping out. One of them brand new big boy toys. I do big boy things. I make big boy noise. Cause I know what girls want. I know what they like. They wanna stay up and party all night. So bring a friend.
Let me talk to you, tell you how it is. I was thinking when I saw that body, gotta get shorty.
So that's just a steady drone note. It doesn't really have much shape or body to it. It's kind of an attackless note, so it just kind of appears. And it's one of those hard things to spot unless you have some decent reproduction going on. Next reference that I'm going to use is for stereo field. So now we're talking about really how far out in the stereo field we're going. One of the tracks I like to use for this is a Paul McCartney track. It's called Jenny Wren from Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. I believe it was a Nigel Godrich production. And this is super hyper stereo. It's also got sibilants in there in the vocals, and also has a low Irish hand drum that comes in. And actually, even if I let it play, there's a saxophone where the guy's humming under his breath.
Like so many girls, Jenny Wren could sing. She saw poverty breaking up her home. Wounded warriors took her song away.
So did you guys get all the little details, the hyper stereo, the sibilants, the low notes from the Irish bow drum or whatever it was? This is the last of the references. This is a group called the Bad Plus, which is, I think, Chad Blake, Bob Ludwig recording. I use this basically because it's upright bass and has the most massive kick drum I've heard anywhere. It's just a great test of space, frequency, and just something that sounds good. Great sounding mix, yeah. That's it for the references. You guys are familiar all with MS and center and side. So side and center information is something that you really need to reacclimate yourself with headphones. Headphones are understated when it comes to hand information. So when you're making the switch from speakers to headphones, you're going to probably want to over-accentuate to start with because it's just much more... it's much easier to make a mix sound small and less stereo when you make that initial switch. So I would recommend exaggerating your steps at first. It may feel a little weird and you may feel a little, oh, this is too much. It's probably not, but time will tell for that stuff. So Justin was asking about why I switched from LCD 4s to LCD 5s. The 5s are their new flagships, and I tried them a couple of years ago, and I didn't initially love them. They're smaller and lighter, which was definitely a plus, but I'll tell you, my first shock was that I thought, where'd the bass go? And it's not that the bass is not there, it's that the high mids are more there. Again, once your brain retrains, it'll reproduce the 5 hertz on these things. So it's not that the bass is gone, it's that the high mids are a little more in your face. And having that high mid detail lets you work on stuff even finer in the mid range. That's great. Your brain is plastic and it'll adjust to almost anything, but you have to give it time and you have to make an effort to really retrain because it's very easy to go back to your old way of doing it. And the thing I really tell all the guys trying to switch to headphones now, don't go back to check on your speakers after you just start on headphones. It's a bad, bad, bad idea. You will go back there and you're untraining your brain to listen to the new thing. So don't think you can go back and say, I got my headphones on now. Let me check, make sure it sounds good on the speakers again. Bad idea. Stick with the headphones, make the jump, check maybe a few weeks later. Don't do it then. So for me personally, I would say besides monitoring, second would be experience. And that actually maybe is the most important thing for your mastering. Having some 20,000 foot view of a song is great, but if you've been doing that for 10 or 20 or 30 years, it's way better. Third is restraint. It is, honestly, like not turning the knob when just because you have a knob in front of you. The DAC I use, it's this one here, and it's from Chord Electronics. It's the same company that does these boxes that you're listening to now. And they're an old English company. I've been using their gear since mid-90s. And this is their flagship DAC. Even their non-flagship stuff is stellar. So can't recommend it enough. And that's what I use for my day-to-day driver. I personally don't like to monitor at very loud volumes, but some things require you to turn things up to really see what they do. Sibilance and harshness doesn't translate until a certain point. Bass also changes its tonality at a certain volume. So I'll check things at higher levels, but generally it's a comfortable listening level. Honestly, like on my Dave, it's numeric. So I basically just go to, I know like 12 is a setting I like on there for my headphone combo for work. And then for testing, I might dial it up to a -2 or something. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate your time.